Hello everyone, Merry Christmas, ho ho ho, etc, etc. Yes, another one has come and gone, but of course the world of Rangers never stops. My name's David Edgar, I am your host as always, and I'm joined this week by the splendid, mellifluous meister of masterful bon mots, Mr. Martyn Ramsey.
Merry Christmas, David, listeners, hope you're all well.
Did you have a good one?
I did, thanks. One of the very fortunate people in a position where they don't have to break any rules to see a lot of family, given that there's quite a fair bit of family living with us at the moment. So it was nice to have a Christmas with very small people, very excited, and yeah, that was everything you want from a festive season, including 3 points and hopefully more to come.
Yeah, you and I often ruminate on this, the influence that a game, a sport, but a game, we're not playing it, watching it, following it, has on our lives. I love Christmas. It's one of my favourite times of the year. It's, family, even I didn't have to break any rules either. Luckily, we still managed the 8 people, 3 households. We were all good with it. So got to see my parents, my nephews, my sister, my husband, etc. But even with that, a defeat or a draw in either of the 2 matches on the 23rd or 26th, and I'd have been in a great big huff. Especially
the one before. You and I grew up roughly the same time, David. Rangers and Christmas seem to go well generally. It's when certainly Smith's teams would put the foot down, and that's where titles were won really by absolutely powering through December and January. So. Yeah, it's ridiculous. These players do not know us. They do not care about us. But care very much about them, and our mood round that table on Christmas Day would have been affected by a sluggish performance and a couple of points dropped in Perth. But thankfully, not to be.
Indeed, Martyn here got married last week. Congratulations, or a couple of weeks ago, and his first marital row came from the fact that you did go in a huff the day after you got married because Rangers lost in Paisley.
Yeah, and just over 24 hours later, the honeymoon had been was very much over. We had met before.
I was wondering if perhaps you'd managed to somehow conceal this personality trait all throughout your relationship.
She's forgotten in 2020, really. She'd have to go back to March, really, before.
True.
So it possibly just slipped her mind. It's all very silly, but when things work out, when trophies are lifted and everything else, it's all worth it.
You're absolutely correct there. And Rangers took another important step with the match against Hibs on Boxing Day. One of my all-time favourite matches, Martyn, is Hibs on Boxing Day 1995. The Gaza yellow card game, 7-0, Jim Leighton walking off looking like a victim of shell shock at the end of that match. Rangers absolutely running riot that day. Didn't ever really threaten to be a game like that, I'm afraid, at the weekend. Hibs are a decent side, in my opinion. Jack Ross knows what he's doing as a coach. They have some decent players. Nisbet, the striker, I think really does have a decent amount of potential. I think that they might be onto something there. But the rest of them all know their job. They were never going to make it easy. And look, we've got the Old Firm game coming up, and I don't doubt that Hibs are the 3rd best team in the country. But even so, given the matches we've played, only going on that, Hibs are the side that caused us most trouble.
Easily. Whether Nisbet was as effective, was as dangerous without his pal up with him is up for debate. But you're right, they are given jobs. They're kind of fearless when it comes to the Old Firm. I think that they're quite secure in the jobs that they have, secure in their organisational setup. But if we lose, and what? We need to keep playing in a particular way that will get us points, elsewhere. So why would we change that too much? So funny you mentioned that 95 game. I think I texted after about 6 or 7 minutes that this is very much like a basketball game. It's very end-to-end, very open. Hibs could obviously have scored very early on, and maybe I put the dampener in the whole game because it seemed to settle down and never really got back into that very Towsy start again. But yeah, at home or away, that it's certainly a game that you're quite relieved to get out of Dodge with all three.
I think speaking of that start, Rangers could have conceded very early. We didn't give much away in terms of chances at the weekend, which is something we'll come back to. But early on we did. Got done in again, a cross out from full. But yeah, it was the same error we've seen a few times. I think maybe just literally caught cold. The weather conditions were appalling. And I know Scottish people hate hearing this, right? And I know they all go, it's always been like that. And you're right. And it's going to be like that for the next few months. And it'll be like that next year, etc., etc. But it's still quite difficult to play in those conditions at times. The wind was horrendous. Rain, I never have much sympathy for. It can rain. Snow, it can snow. You get on with it. But wind is a bugger because it does, I think, just introduce an element of uncertainty into people's play. And it also because it wasn't particularly readable. You know what I mean? It wasn't just, there's a strong wind blowing left to right. It was gusty. It would come up out of nowhere, and it was swirly. So all of that played a factor. But got a wee bit lucky because the boy just couldn't get enough on it at the back post, or he might be able to steer it in, which would have made for a completely different game. But on that point you made, after about 6 or 7 minutes, the Hibs coaching staff were very much out on the touchline. Quite alarmed, I think, that their team had been sucked into a basketball game, as you put it, that was not what they wanted, because you go toe to toe with us, the chances are they would lose. And I think that's a perfectly sensible route to take if you're Hibs, because if they had gone into that, right, you attack, we'll attack, we'd have beat them. I've no doubt about that, and I don't think the Hibs bench had much doubt about that. So I think that they felt that they got a bit excited, after that chance, and then it did, as you say, settle into that. So then it was whether or not Rangers could get the breakthrough, whether or not we could keep out Hibs on the break. They were certainly more ambitious than saying Motherwell, but equally they were keeping the back door locked. I think, which is perfectly sensible. They
were organised well, they were structured well, but they had threat. And no, I didn't think it was anywhere near as stodgy and as depressing as the Motherwell approach.
No, they always had an outball.
A well-organised defence.
Yeah, they always had an outball. But for Rangers, that meant a lot of possession and having to be patient with it. And I was quite impressed by the way that Rangers did keep to our passing game and do so successfully, which led to the goal we'll discuss in a few seconds. But I thought that Rangers' front four in particular were, certainly keen to try and make things happen. Their movement does give teams a problem. They do move sides about, which against stodgy defences you absolutely need. Could have been ahead a couple of times before we were from set pieces. Connor Goldson, I thought he should have scored. Leon Balogun, maybe a bit unlucky in that it was cleared off the line, but again, I thought should have scored, which would have made things a lot easier. The goal when it came, though, Martyn, was absolutely magnificent, because bear in mind, as I say, I've just moaned about the conditions. To score a goal like that at any time is pretty good. But what I loved about this goal was that it to me, it showcased the strengths of some of our key players. First of all, Joe Aribo, strength, keeps the ball when he's being wrestled. You think that he's going to be pulled down, and he wasn't. He keeps the ball. Glenn Kamara bursting through, as he did against St Johnstone on Wednesday night, adding impetus. Lovely ball. Kamar Ruth, in this tight area, in this tight packed defence, has found a bit of room. God knows how, but he has. And then he picks out a lovely ball. Yanis Hadji times his run. Good finish. 1-0 up. I thought it was a splendid goal.
A brilliant goal. You've just listed the characteristics there, the kind of strength, the perseverance, the patience. Nothing seemed too rushed, but it still felt fluid. The vision to see these connections kind of potentially line up, and then obviously the execution and the passes and the finish. It was a brilliant example of what we're capable of, and it's an example of what Rangers have to do, and what we didn't and haven't done enough in the last couple of seasons in these types of situations where defences are either packed in numbers or just very well drilled. We'd see the tempo far too slow and far too side to side, and please no, you do that, no, You changed the game, thanks. We saw a wee bit in the first half. We saw a lot in the first half against Motherwell the other week. I thought we saw it in the first 20 odd minutes against St Johnstone until the goal came, and then we're back into this type of football that we know we're capable of. And to show that again on Saturday was very encouraging, because it takes bravery. It sounds ridiculous because when it comes to Scottish football audience, we associate bravery with crunching tackles and that alone. It's not. It's playing your game under pressure, playing your game against an opponent that you know are not going to make it easy for you, but sticking to your guns, and having the trust and confidence that you will tease out these openings, and that will be enough. I thought it was a super goal, but it was bigger than that. More just an example of what we are doing at the moment, and haven't done anywhere near enough in those previous 2 seasons.
Yeah, you mentioned a word there, confidence. I think that another aspect of that is confidence in your teammate.
Yeah.
To not always play the square ball to the guy in space, to say, okay, there is a guy approaching you, but I've got faith that you can take the ball in a tight situation and beat him, and that will thus open it up for me. Because otherwise, if you don't, you do lapse into the side-to-side passing in front of a defence, which they will happily sit and watch you do all day to get, till you get frustrated and give the ball away. And I think that Rangers are, because you've got guys like Aribo, because you've got guys like Ruth, the teammates go, no, I can turn it. He'll want the ball there more than it. That's a big part of it. He'll want to take that because he'll have the confidence to go past that guy that's coming on him, and that will open up space for us. One guy who's not in optimum form, I think it's fair to say, is Ryan Kent. And it's an interesting debate this week of all weeks, in that we have 2 matches coming up. We've got St Mirren, obviously, as we return to the scene of, I was going to say the scene of the crime, but it was our crime. St Mirren, they didn't steal it. No, they weren't. We weren't robbed. The crime was that we got complacent and completely shut down, and then did it again after we equalised. So a wee bit unfair on St Mirren that. But I think that people say maybe you should rest them, give them a week out of firing line, all that. But then against Celtic, you always play Ryan Kent.
No, you do. Kent and Morelos are the interesting ones. Things aren't happening with the ball for either of them at all, and haven't really for a while. They haven't long before anyone was really prepared to admit that they weren't. But their movement, their willingness, their effort, I don't think has been in question. And there's also this kind of debate about the use of Morelos this season being maybe a wee bit more intelligent in the space that it helps create for other players, whereas we were so blunt, so obvious. And it's testament to the strength of the squad now, testament to the general confidence that these 2 players that we're talking about, I know you primarily talked about Kent, but I think there's a similarity there this season with Alfredo Morelos as well, is that in the previous season or 2, it's been them and them alone that we were reliant on. And yet they're not as sparkling as they have been, and we're still motoring on quite the thing. So that's better news for us. They won't play like that all season, one would hope. Something will click eventually, because certainly we can't, too good not to. And then, we've got even more options, and Rangers should be even better as a result. But he is still showing up. He's still willing. For both of them, you just hope it just takes something. I hope with Kent it was that goal against Aberdeen, was it a few weeks ago? But I often think he tries too hard at times.
He does try too hard when he feels he's not playing well. I think you can see it. Yeah.
So, that's he's still relatively young. It kind of comes with an experience, I suppose. But I wouldn't quite be at panic stations yet. As long as Ruth and it's Aribo and Hadji at the moment. It was Arfield, it was other players that have chipped in. As long as someone's chipping in with the ball, actually finishing things off, making things happen directly with the ball, then it's possibly not the worst thing to have one or two players who are doing a lot of work without it, and keeping defences on their toes, because Celtic will be wary of that, one would assume.
Yeah, for me, you always play Ryan Kent against Celtic. One, he hates them, for whatever reason, almost as much as we do, I think. And two, they fear him. So it's a good combo. But I think at times you can see where he knows he's not quite on it, and you're right, forcing it is the exact term. Never hides, that's one thing about him, but just wasn't in his best form at the weekend. But you're right when you mentioned that in previous years we've been over reliant on certain players, but at the moment, Roof, and then you're getting Aribo getting back to his best, Hadji coming in now and making an impression in the last couple of games. This is the difference, and you've still got Ita and you've still got Defoe that you can call on. So that, I think, is primarily the difference. Into the second half, Hibs, I thought, began to assert some territorial dominance. The game shifted and moved into, I wouldn't say moved into the Rangers end, it moved into the, if you like, our second quarter of our half, where Rangers were keeping Hibs at bay, I thought, pretty well. The manager spoke afterwards about one of the tactics was to try and draw them out and hit them on the break. And the argument could be Rangers did have a lot of good, I wouldn't necessarily call them opportunities, because that indicates, it ends with a shot at goal, but we had a lot of good positions we should have done better in on the break, I thought.
Yeah, it's one of those failure to create the opportunities to create chances, if that makes any sense. It's something just a step back from missing chances.
Because it's a lot like 4-on-3s that are only there for a second, but the wrong ball, the wrong decision, and they're gone. So, you see it happening as it breaks, but then it's over almost instantly because someone's made the wrong decision.
Yeah, and it kind of falls on how you look at life, I suppose, and we're all optimists or pessimists, I guess. When we're all watching football, I think we're all pessimists, and I think that's just the nature of the nerves and the nature of being unable to control this thing that means so much in your life. We are not creating the chances at this minute in time. Now, the positive spin on it is Rangers in the past few weeks, in the league anyway, have been doing something that we simply have not been able to do previously, which we've learned how to grind. We have learned how to do enough to conserve energy, because this period, pretty much from October to Christmas in Scotland, is wild, and you can't go at it full steam, or you will burn out in the second half of the season, which we've done. So you just need to know and be able to get enough done at whatever level that you can get away with, really. That's what grinding out means. The next question, and that's great. It's great to see, because we have not been able to do it. Like, we've had a common complaint about that, really, over the piece. Right at the start of the season, you pick out a few 1-0s, can't you? Pittodrie Rugby Park, and the Hibs game there. Big points. That's all that kind of matters. The next question is, will we be able to shift it? Shift the gears. Basically on Saturday, St Mirren, we'll talk about in a minute. Does that need Rangers at full throttle? Maybe, given the reminder of the cup still fresh there. But the Old Firm game will. I don't think we can really kind of grind that out. I don't think we can do that in second gear, as bad as they are, as troubled as they are. But that game, you'd hope, kind of takes care of itself. And then you're into a period where you're not playing every 20 minutes. We don't have a midweek game for
3 weeks, I think.
Ages, I think. Oh, the Hibs game at the end of January.
Yeah.
So that's different then. You're into a different stage of the season where you can probably give more on that weekend, with the knowledge that you can recuperate. You have time to recuperate. You get time to work on things. It's just a different kind of proposition. but how easy is it to be in a position or in this mood, this kind of mode where you've just been doing enough, getting through, and then been asked to shift the gears up a couple? Well, we'll find out.
Absolutely. Hibs had a penalty. You might have heard this, but Hibs had a penalty shout. Now, as of people might know, I'm fortunate enough to be at the games at the moment, and I, without TV coverage or whatever, I watched it and I went, oof, bit high feet there, but didn't think it was a penalty. And certainly the reaction from Hibs players and their bench wasn't, we have been completely done out of a Stonewall penalty kick reaction. The arms go up, but the arms go up for everything. In football, everybody claims everything, but it was kind of gone and forgotten about almost instantly. And I was thinking, he needs to be a wee bit careful there. That can go wrong easy. But to my surprise, afterwards, it was apparently the clearest penalty kick that anyone had ever seen, and terrible decision. And how did they not get that? Whereas, I've got to be honest, I thought, yeah, he went up, but didn't come close to touching the Hibs player. Why it was such a Stonewall penalty, I don't know. On Sky, they had their referee expert, Dermot Gallagher, who's no friend of Rangers. He said, no, it's definitely not a penalty because there's absolutely no contact at all there. No reason for the Hibs player to go down. Your thoughts, Martyn?
Well, you've answered that question, or Dermot Gallagher has answered that question, or other people answered that question on the same day. But those people were not paid to give their thoughts on a national broadcaster. They were not paid to be experts, given that insight. Football in general, I don't think really does punditry particularly well. There are obviously some exceptions, especially in England. But even then, a lot of it's garbage. The focus we give on ex-pros is probably too weighted. They're not as good as they are in other sports in terms of giving that kind of knowledge and insight. Not enough of them know the laws of the game. But in Scotland, you'd be struggling to pick out those exemptions. And what that does to the national game when you have such a kind of watered down soap opera approach to covering the game, and therefore shaping the conversation about the game and what we expect to see from what we do see is another debate. It could have been sorted pretty quickly, even if it was raised in the first place, which it kind of shouldn't have been. It shouldn't have had to wait a couple of days or whatever for Dermot Gallagher on another broadcaster to come up and put up a line under it. The standard's just terrible. Generally speaking, it's terrible. Then you move into agendas and everything else, which, you know me, David, I'm not hugely interested in that as much as I love the 1990s. But it's a sign of that kind of desperation, I guess. Broadcasters want to talk about referees. That show you mentioned there, the Dermot Gallagher one, that happens every Monday?
Every Monday.
Every Monday morning. So football broadcasters love talking about decisions, even or especially in the era of VAR. So that in itself is a generic thing. It's not specific to Scotland, not specific to Rangers, but you are bringing another agenda into the coverage here, obviously. And it's always a good sign. We're back to there should be international referees covering Rangers, like there are in the Europa League, where we're doing not too
really
bad.
Well, again.
I'd love to hear it. It's a good sign that the nature is healing, and we're coming back to what we grew up knowing, because for those peddling it, either professionally for cash or just because it helps them sleep better at night, it is a comfort, and it's the only comfort that they appear to be drawing at the moment. You would call it Trumpian if this shower weren't decades ahead of the game.
Proto-Trumpian.
Yeah.
If you will. I think that in particular in Scotland at the moment, in politics and in life in general, I think that you have this thing of, I know it's not that, but I want it to be that. and therefore I'm going to go with that. And again, that's something Celtic fans have been ahead of for years as well. It's seeing the world as you desire that it should be, as opposed to how it actually is. And I think, you saw that. Certainly you get it from the BBC. It's, well, okay, by the rules, it's not a penalty, but I think it should be. Okay, that's a completely different thing. So it's not a penalty then. Yeah, that's kind of what you're being paid for. Could you just help us here? We don't need the rest of the bullshit. If anything, the only penalty in the game was the foul on Roof by that animal Porteous, who at it again. Said it before, he's going to seriously hurt somebody. Nothing will be done until that somebody is a Celtic player. And even then, it would have to be one of the valuable ones before anything is said about him. It's this love in Scotland. Oh, look at a thumping tackle. No, that's not defending. That's anyone can do that. Doesn't make you a hard man, by the way, doing that. Souness was a hard man. Leaving somebody crumpled on the ground 5 feet away with nobody noticing, that's a hard man. Anyway, rant over. Moving on, Alfie, you mentioned earlier, I thought he looked pretty sharp again. Yeah. I know he missed that sitter at St Johnstone, but his link-up play was a lot better because, some of the games before his suspension, the ball was bouncing off him. I mean, he was like a wall rather than an outlet. But I thought he looked back to holding up the ball and driving it at them at the weekend, which was a positive sign.
I would agree with that. I think it was the Ross County game. It was like a curb, his first touch. I think it's spun into the main stand. You were there. Even though, his off the ball work, as we've mentioned, has its benefits. I would absolutely agree. Far more focused, and the ball was sticking. Something has built in his head. There's no way he misses those chances 8 months ago. None. And I think in terms of that, it just needs one, and I'm pretty sure they'll start to flow again. And how poetic would it be if they started flowing this week?
It would be very pleasant indeed. But Rangers, did certainly Hibs were the team with the momentum. But again, apart from one long range effort, which was superbly dealt with by Alan McGregor, not really under any. It wasn't a case of saying, we got lucky, they were hitting the post and the keeper was making save after it. It really wasn't like that. But Rangers got over the line and now move on, as mentioned, to St Mirren. I can't remember the last time we played well in Paisley, in all honesty. We've tended to win, thankfully, but performances haven't been great for whatever reason. It would be a very good day to put that right.
Yeah, clearly there are some wrongs to right from our point of view. They fully deserved their cup win. It was the end result of a bit of complacency that I felt was growing a wee bit. We weren't caught out by it, but I felt that was in the post a wee bit. I had my fears about that. And not just the lineup, but the lineup should have been fine. It should have been okay, but just it's the general approach. You would think that won't be the case on Wednesday afternoon, that we will be out to kind of put that right. And you're right, I can't remember the last time in any kind of iteration, any kind of manager, any Rangers team that had gone there and really put in a show. It seems to be a real grind of a fixture. If it's another 1-0, we'll probably take it. But with Saturday looming, and again that need to start shifting up the gears, and just in terms of the general performance, that general fluidity from the start, I think we're starting games particularly brightly, and that would do our confidence. When I say our confidence, you and I, and those listening and those watching over the next two games, the world would be good just to see Rangers at it from the start. I'm sure they'll manage it fine, however they choose to go about it, but they'll surely to Christ they won't be walking into it with their slippers on thinking we just have to turn up here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about this Rangers run, and it says a lot about the rather exceptional circumstances of the last 10 years. Rangers have won 12 league matches on the spin. That's fantastic. Wasn't that long ago, remember, when 3 seemed like an unachievable milestone. But if we don't make it 14, there's going to be an awful lot of angry bears out there.
Welcome to Rangers. Have you two met? I mean,
Yes, indeed.
This is the nature of this club. I've read a few people, understandably, questioning that, how healthy it is, how conducive it is to good performances. But that's why Rangers define ourselves to the rest of the footballing world as trophy collectors, right? That's our thing. That's success. And that doesn't come about by shrugging off things as being, we meant well. We had good intent. We did a lot, but you should have seen us last week. We were brilliant last week. It's today, or it's yesterday, or it's the last game. Smith used to say you're 3 defeats away from a crisis at this club, and it seemed ridiculous. And of course, it probably is. But I don't think you get the club that we have without that incessant drive to keep those standards up. It's been a huge run. It's been necessary. 6 under Gerrard, is that the best? And that came at the end of that first season, when dead rubbers, basically. Pressure's off. So to do that, to do it in different ways, there's a few 4-0s and an 8-0, and there's been a couple of very average performances, but we have seen the job through. And all of that is great, but you're right. Start to slip up, and all that matters is the margin, right? That league football is about how other teams do, by definition. So how far away you are, if you're, all things being equal, if we were already sitting 10, 13 points ahead, and this run did end this week, we've seen good Rangers teams have bad results before, but the comfort was so big, and the knowledge that we've already won 3 or 4 league titles already recently, we'll be fine, because they have that mental strength to kind of pick it back up and power on through. They don't. So, it's all in the context of everyone else and all the other teams, or, one other team. So that's just the nature of it. This is a big old 10 days, I think, really. And I know the few days seem important because they're right on, as Pittodrie's not that far away after. You're talking 3 wins, and you're not quite in Devon Lock territory, but you can see it.
Yeah. I mean, the end would certainly be in sight there. The mountaintop would certainly be in sight anyway. No matter when we would reach it. So absolutely. Now, before we go today, Martyn, I don't think we can leave without, because there won't be a show, obviously New Year's Day. So we will look ahead then to Saturday. Not so much about the game, because there's one in between. So things can change between then and now, of course, with that. But it's January the 2nd, 2021, 50 years after the second Ibrox disaster, when 66 Rangers supporters lost their life in the tragedy that took place that day. Commemorations for it will unfortunately be affected by COVID. There are certain things that simply we won't be able to do this year. But yeah, it somehow seems fitting that it's a match against Celtic on January the 2nd, when our thoughts, as they do every year, turn to the 66. But this year, with, I think, even more resonance than normal.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it, since we've had that fall exactly on the days. Maybe 2011 was certainly one of the last. We've had this fixture in between Christmas and New Year. Obviously, the last few iterations. I mean, it is always a point in time whenever we mark it. Seemingly, but when you get this round number, and especially 50, that poignance for whatever reason, I'm not entirely sure, seems even more resonant, seems even more need to reflect and commemorate. And yeah, I'm sure in these difficult circumstances, the club will still mark that properly. At least there'll be a guarantee that it will be marked in the game with dignity for a change.
No coughing fits.
No, those won't be in earshot. But yeah, the day itself and the anniversary, there are times to obviously just take some time away as a football fan. Used to going week after week and going to all sorts of grounds, taking for granted that you'll get up the road after it. And it is always a moment to just appreciate how fortunate you are and how unfortunate others weren't. But Ibrox is the monument itself. We have a statue for that. The stadium is the tribute, and that's there every day. And in normal times, we enjoy that every couple of weeks. And I always think of that as being the more kind of fitting, lasting, vibrant monument to those who sadly never come home.
Saturday was one of the strangest days that I've had going to Ibrox, even throughout this, because it was Boxing Day, and there I was walking through Glasgow city centre, which was deserted, and then getting to Ibrox, deserted. But as I was walking around the stadium, there were lots of tributes at bricks to people. Obviously, this time of year there were flowers and gifts and various other, and I mean hundreds to the possibly into thousands. There were a lot, and it was just an incredibly moving event for me. Just walking up there and realising the scale of what that institution means to people and the family ties, the generational aspects of it, that people, loved ones, are commemorated as part of that stadium. And as you say, the deeper aspect of that is the stadium itself will always be the tribute to the 66 people who passed away that day. And it's been said before, it'll be said again, nobody shouldn't come home from attending a game of football ever. It really is that simple, and no matter your age, no matter what happens to the club, we've had some dark days, that will always be the one. I think that is without doubt the worst thing that happened to the club, and all we can do at this time of year is to remember our 66 absent friends.
No, absolutely. And your point there, it's so easy to kind of be cynical about buying a brick for someone, and that is quite a touching story that will never change for those who have dedicated that brick to their family, and they will, whatever the situation, still go there at particular points in the year. Because when you're 5 or 6, 7, whenever you're introduced to this club, you're not just handed something to keep you quiet for a Saturday afternoon. You're handed something that's a legacy that other people have gone before you, walked the same streets, sung the same songs, whatever. You're carrying something on and keeping those bonds alive and keeping those memories alive is a big part of that.
Amen to that. Well, folks, that'll do us on Heart and Hand this week. And for this year, we will return, of course, next week, January the 4th, when we'll have a full review of the Old Firm match. Until then, can I thank our executive producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Miles? Can I thank my splendid guest today, Martyn Ramsey?
Pleasure, David. Happy New Year, everyone, when it comes.
And for those of you who are sitting with book tokens, even in the form of the ones with the Queen's head on them, may I just point you in the direction of Martyn's book, The 50 Greatest Rangers Games. Very, very much a wonderful read. I actually reread it over the Christmas period. And I've got to say that while the introductory chapter by me is without doubt the highlight, it's really well written. But the book itself is absolutely fantastic. Martyn, where can they pick up a copy?
On Amazon, Waterstones, the usual places. Also on the Heart and Hand website if you want it signed, if you want it as a gift for someone. I'm happy to do a wee note in there for someone in particular. But yeah, it's been interesting to see the Twitter kind of explode again as people got them for for Christmas presents. It isn't just a rundown of these 50 greatest games as voted for by you, the Kinhart and public. It's not 50 match reports. Hopefully it's a kind of wider narrative explaining why things resonate to you, why things don't resonate to you, and what that says about how we do history. So from the very first game right up until 2018, I think, it is covered.
At this religious time of year, let me say, if you want a good book, this is a bloody good book. So I can't think of any better advertising slogan than that, Martyn. Apart from maybe, buy my fucking book. That worked for me. That one sold out on
you
that
and
one.
Bob Geldof just fucking saying, give me the fucking money.
Give me the fucking... I just went with the direct thing. It's like, this took me ages. Right? For the love of God, can I get my 59 pence per copy that I'm entitled to? Nobody gets rich off a book unless you're Dan Brown, I think. Okay, folks, thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week. Until then, have a fabulous new year and stay staunch. Take care. Bye-bye.